San Siro is one of the most famous stadiums on earth. Real Madrid have lifted the Champions League trophy there. The World Cup final walked through its tunnel. For 100 years, it has been the loudest, proudest ground in Italian football. So when UEFA quietly took away its right to host the 2027 Champions League final, the news hit hard. This was not some small regional ground losing out. This was San Siro, and the reason it got rejected says a lot about where the stadium, and Italian football itself, is really headed. San Siro opened its doors in 1926, built for AC Milan on farmland on the edge of the city. It grew piece by piece over the decades, and Inter Milan eventually moved in too, turning it into the shared home of both of Milan's giants, something almost no other city in the world can claim. Officially, it carries the name Stadio Giuseppe Meazza, after one of Italy's earliest football legends, but almost nobody calls it that. To fans everywhere, it is simply San Siro, named after the neighborhood it sits in. It was rebuilt for the 1990 World Cup, adding the towering concrete spiral ramps that give the stadium its unmistakable shape and pushing its capacity up close to 80,000 seats. It hosted 2 European Championship finals, a World Cup final, and 2 Champions League finals, most recently in 2016, when Real Madrid beat Atletico Madrid on penalties. For decades, it stood as proof that a stadium built in the 1920s could still host the biggest nights in world football, and both Milan clubs used its history as a selling point every time they talked about their future. In May of 2024, UEFA handed San Siro one more chance to shine. Milan was named the host city for the 2027 Champions League final, with Budapest taking the 2026 edition. It looked like a natural choice. San Siro had done it before, twice, and the city wanted it badly. But there was a catch buried in the announcement. UEFA said the decision depended on the Italian Football Federation confirming that the stadium's future renovation plans would not get in the way of the event. That single condition ended up unraveling the whole deal. The trouble was that San Siro's future had already become a mess. Both AC Milan and Inter had spent years arguing about whether to renovate the old ground or knock it down and build something new next door. Around the same time UEFA gave Milan the final, the two clubs actually rejected a plan to modernize the existing stadium, choosing instead to push for a brand new build. That left the city unable to promise UEFA anything solid. Nobody could say for certain whether San Siro would even still be standing in its current form by 2027, let alone whether it would be free of scaffolding, cranes, and construction fencing during the biggest club match on the calendar. On top of that, reports out of Italy claimed the stadium was failing UEFA's own checklist. According to Italian outlet Il Giorno, San Siro reportedly fell short on 11 out of 22 requirements UEFA expects from a stadium hosting matches at that level, covering things like modern hospitality areas, media facilities, and general infrastructure. For a ground built nearly a century ago, patched together renovation after renovation, that was not exactly shocking. Inter president Beppe Marotta himself later admitted publicly that the stadium in its current state could no longer meet UEFA's standards for major events, which was an unusually honest thing for a club president to say about his own home ground. It turned a vague scheduling worry into a real, documented problem that UEFA could point to. By September 2024, UEFA had seen enough. The organization's executive committee announced that Milan's guarantee simply was not good enough, and the 2027 final was stripped away. UEFA's statement was blunt, saying the city could not guarantee the stadium and its surroundings would be free of renovation work during the tournament, so the final would not be assigned to Milan after all. A UEFA official later explained that the nomination had been left open specifically to see whether the stadium would stay in its current form, and Milan simply could not give that assurance in time. UEFA reopened bidding for a new host, and roughly a year later, the final was handed instead to the Estadio Metropolitano in Madrid, home of Atletico Madrid, which will get its first taste of hosting a major European final. There was even talk in Italy of trying to keep the final on home soil by offering Rome's Stadio Olimpico as a replacement, but that idea never gained enough momentum, and the game moved abroad instead. For San Siro, a stadium that had hosted the final twice before, it was a quiet and humbling exit from the conversation. The bigger problem for Milan is that this was never really about one single match. San Siro was also flagged as unfit to host games at Euro 2032, which Italy is co-hosting alongside Turkey. That warning pushed AC Milan and Inter to finally settle their long-running argument. Instead of trying to patch up the old stadium one more time, both clubs agreed to buy the site outright and build a completely new arena in its place. In September 2025, Milan City Council approved the sale of San Siro and the surrounding land to the two clubs for around €197 million, clearing the path for construction to begin. The clubs brought in the architecture firms Foster & Partners and Manica, the same studios behind some of the world's most advanced sports venues, to design a new stadium seating around 71,500 fans. The whole project is not just about football either. It covers roughly 281,000 square meters of land, and the plans include hotels, shops, homes, and green public space built around the new arena, turning the area into something people can visit year-round, instead of just on match days. Under the current plan, most of the historic bowl will eventually come down, though part of the old second tier may be kept as a nod to the stadium's history. The existing San Siro will keep hosting Milan and Inter matches while the new ground rises nearby, with demolition of the old stadium not expected to start in earnest until after the new one opens, likely around 2031, just in time for Italy's Euro 2032 matches. Before any of that happens, San Siro still has one last huge moment on the calendar. It was chosen to host the opening ceremony of the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics in February 2026, giving the old stadium a final fitting spotlight before its slow goodbye truly begins. Even that goodbye has not gone smoothly. Some residents' groups and opposition politicians in Milan pushed back hard against the sale, questioning whether the stadium and its land were sold for too little and calling for the deal to be thrown out. Several legal appeals against the sale are still working their way through Italy's regional courts. Meanwhile, the first small signs of demolition have already appeared on site, with an old ticket office near the stadium torn down over the summer of 2026 to make room for early construction work, even as environmental surveys reportedly found pollution levels in the soil that need to be cleaned up before building can properly begin. So the loss of the 2027 Champions League final was never really the whole story. It was the moment the cracks in San Siro's future became impossible to ignore. A stadium that hosted 2 Champions League finals, a World Cup final, and countless legendary nights got turned away not because Madrid built something flashier, but because nobody could promise UEFA that the old ground would even be in one piece. That is a strange way for one of football's great cathedrals to lose its status, not through a single dramatic collapse, but through years of indecision finally catching up with it all at once. San Siro will host its Olympic moment, keep hosting Milan and Inter for a few more seasons, and then slowly disappear to make way for something new. Whether that new stadium can ever mean as much to fans as the old one is a different question entirely. What do you think? Should San Siro have been saved and renovated instead of replaced? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe for more stadium stories like this one.